Guten Tag. Hello and welcome, my fellow appropriately obsessed Hoya people. I just have to say that my philodendron rubigiv... I just have to say that my philodendron rubigivenilum, which is something that I repeated like 20 times now, and I cannot get it better than that, formerly known as El Choco Red, looks great in the frame, like... Good job. I know that some people haven't noticed the abuse of this plant because I keep constantly hitting it, but I do love it in the frame, especially now because he is absolutely massive. I don't know if I can actually kind of show the entire plant next to me. Let us attempt. Oh gosh. Okay. I mean, that is right next to my head. It's a big head. It's a big leaf. This is the leaf before it, if I can, which is also big, not as big. The newer one is bigger. This is just very, okay, rest. It's very heavy. He is in a heavy pot. This is the inner pot for that huge cover pot. Oh, I fit under it. Oh, I like that. I think this should totally be my look. Goodness gracious, you're huge. You are huge. The new leaves are barely red on the back, unfortunately, because he ain't no juvenilum anymore. He is midlife, probably. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just trying to rotate him. I cannot believe this was a small plant last year. And this has nothing to do with the video, but... Ooh, finger stuck, finger stuck. Let's just turn him so you can see him. Okay, great. Excellent. Workout for the year completed. Anyways, today's video has nothing to do with philodendrons and all to do with Hoyas, and specifically how to care for your Hoyas in winter, because winter is coming. They have been warning us in Game of Thrones, which is, by the way, a TV show I have never seen. I only saw like 2 seasons, and I know I am like abomination for not seeing the entire show, but I just had other things to do which do not include introducing like, I don't know, 10 new characters in every episode. Like, who can keep track? You know, if I need a notebook, thank you very much. I have other things to watch. Mostly the videos that need to be edited. I really did want to talk about how to care for Hoyas in winter. This is something that I wanted to do last year and the year before that, but finally this year, I mean, you're lucky. I do think this is an interesting topic and very useful in this period. I think a lot of the things that I will say today, most of the seasoned Hoya growers know, if not all of the seasoned Hoya growers. And a lot of these things are very logical, so I think a lot of you are not going to be surprised, but I think this could be also a good opportunity for all of us to come together, not physically, but virtually, and you can leave some tips in the comments below if you have something that I didn't say and you think it's a good tip for overwintering Hoyas. Leave that down below, and also something that I should say at the beginning of the video: subscribe and like the video. Even if you haven't seen it, trust me, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. There are several factors that I think are important, so I think I will put some timestamps in the video, but I think it will be useful to kind of watch all the way through, not just because it's gonna be very good for me, but that is one of the reasons, but also I think some of these things will kind of overlap, so I don't know if I'm going to be very successful at putting the timestamps. I will definitely try, but I just think it will be useful to watch all the way through. So if you have subscribed, you may continue watching the video, and if you have not, let's just give you a second here, because I think you just need a bit more to catch up with the rest of us. Okay, I think that's good enough. So let's just get into the tips. That was very dramatic and unnecessary. One of the 2 biggest challenges for us who grow Hoyas, whether it be inside all year round or maybe you take your plants out during the summer, is definitely the light. If you are in the northern hemisphere and if you need to take your Hoyas inside during this period, or even if you're in Australia but you need to take your Hoyas inside, clearly not now because you are going into spring. But anyways, just not to, it's already a tangent. If you need to take your Hoyas inside at one moment, or if you grow them inside all year round, you definitely will struggle at some point with the light. I think there are very few people who don't, simply because, even if you you have good exposure, if you have those beautiful southern and western facing windows, or even if you have a greenhouse, we typically work with less light during the winter periods, and I think it's just like a very small fraction of people who do have those ideal conditions. So most of us do work with limited windows, not ideal exposure, even though we try to gaslight ourselves, it is better than it is, and a growing collection. So all of those things kind of conflict one another. The way I grow my Hoyas during the entire year is I grow them under LED lights. I use grow lights. I have, I think, 6 Mars Hydro grow lights. 3 of those I bought myself. 3 of those were sent for sponsorship, as you know, if you have been following the channel. And I grow my most prized Hoyas in grow tents. I have 3 grow tents. I have 2 big ones and 1 small one, but in the small one, I just don't have enough space to put a grow light because I had to, you know, if I show you, and I definitely will, because why not share the entire scope of my Hoya obsession, right? So I have one of those tents that is actually supposed to be, you know, vertical. It's horizontal on top of my 2 bigger grow tents. So in that situation, I cannot really put a actual grow light, so I use regular LED lights. But in my 2 grow tents, I do have 2 big grow lights. They are FC3000 Mars Hydro lights. The same light lights up this wall behind the Anthurium verrucanum. I also have 2 TS600 lights, which are non-dimmable. They are above, you know, this space here. They're currently turned off because they overexpose me, and I already do that myself, right? And I have 1 grow light TS1000 in the Millsbow cabinet. All of my grow lights that can be dimmed are dimmed to about 25%. I just found that works the best for me. When it comes to an artificial light, whether it be, you know, regular LED light or an actual grow light, they are going to be most efficient in a grow tent, and there's just no way around that. I know that grow tents for a lot of people are an eyesore. Believe me, I'm not blind, I'm just insane. I'm just very obsessed with Hoyas, so I don't mind because I kind of made this my thing, right? So it would be ridiculous to be bothered by the grow tents because, you know, I just, at this point, either live of selling Hoyas or live of making content about Hoyas. This is the only space where I can grow them, so 3 grow tents stacked on top of one another it is. Not the safest situation, so, you know, don't do it. You did not hear it here. I did notice the best results in the grow tents, and I have the regular LED lights, as I said, in the smallest one, and they still work much better than those lights ever worked for me when I was growing outside of the tent. And the simple reason for that is because all the grow tents have a reflective coating on the inside. So all the light bounces back and illuminates your plants, and that is really the most efficient way to use it. Even in the cabinet, even if you put the white background, which I have like a pegboard that is not fully utilized, that does reflect some of the light, but you know, 3 sides of that cabinet are glass, so that light escapes. The same goes for the lights that are hanging in my room. So there is just a lot of light leakage. I don't know what's the proper term. A lot of light will just not be used. The light is still going to be efficient, don't get me wrong, but again, not as efficient as it would have been in the grow tent. But again, for several reasons, you know, I understand that you may not want a grow tent, you cannot fit a grow tent, you find it an eyesore, or, you know, you just are at the end of your space, which I'm here. I can only fit 3 grow tents, but if I could, I would definitely fit in more, but I cannot, so I find other solutions. So if you choose to use a grow light, you are going to get the best out of it if you use it in a grow tent, or if you make something that will work the same. I have seen that some people have kind of DIY'd covers for their shelves with reflective coating, and that is a great way to kind of be crafty, I guess. We have seen the extent of me being good at DIY. Spoiler, not very great at it. At one point I did think about that, and it's still going to be a bit of an eyesore, but again, I think there was just one moment in growing plants where you know, a switch gets flipped, or I don't know, a fuse goes out, I guess, in our heads, and it's like, no, nothing really matters, right? It's all about how the plants will do. I did kind of make a selection of my Hoyas and most valuable ones, and that's not just, monetary value, it's the ones that mean maybe the most to me, that I want them to do the best. They are in the grow tents. Now my grow tents are fairly large. They are 120 by 120 centimeters, and I will put the feet somewhere on the screen so you can know. And the best place in the tent is around 60 or 70 centimeters away from the light in my case. So that is the top shelf and also the walls of the tent. So you do have a lot of Hoyas also on the walls. They're not entirely covered by the Hoyas because it's physically impossible, but that's also a good thing because light can be reflected as well. The lower level of the shelf is not so useful for Hoyas. Maybe some very low light Hoyas. I did find that some of my Hoyas did burn a bit when they were on the top level, so I put something like Hoya thuathienhuensis, my Hoya mandanillafolia. They are on the lower level. But that lower level, if you have like a mixed collection, if you don't only grow Hoyas, for example, I have Syngoniums and some aroids, they do well on that lower level without any additional lighting. I really don't have anything else in my grow tents at this point, and the Syngoniums are thriving, and I think this would be a good space for something like begonias, potentially some anthuriums, though I did find them to be a bit tricky in the grow tent. So some plants that are not so demanding in terms of light, that lower level will be good for them. However, my plan for the future is to put additional, just regular LED light and grow some Hoyas. I kind of, again, have to filter through them and see which of them, should get the best real estate on the top of the shelf and which of them can move to the bottom of the shelf. But in my opinion, it is really the best way in which you can overwinter your Hoyas or potentially grow them long term. A lot of the growers use grow tents. Doug Chamberlain uses grow tents and he has fantastic results. Betsy uses grow tents, fantastic results. I know people, well, I don't know people in Sweden, but I would really love to know them who use grow tents, amazing results. So you can find evidence all across the board that they are a very useful addition, much more useful than cabinets in my opinion. Cabinets are pretty and they're convenient for tight spots, but nothing, I think, beats a grow tent. Now, if you don't have a grow light and if you don't want to invest in a grow light, or if you don't want to use a, regular hardware store LED light, that is completely fine. Obviously, you will need some windows. If you don't have windows, you simply will have to invest in some light, but I think that goes without saying, Don't be that delusional. But if you want to grow under natural light, your Hoyas will still survive. Of course, they are not going to thrive, most likely. In many situations, they're not going to thrive because they benefit from the higher humidity, a bit of warmth, and abundance of light. So if you are someone like me, I have 2 northwest facing windows that really should have been west in my opinion, but clearly north exists. I did try to grow Hoyas in the window for many years, and every winter they would stop growing, and that was fine. I would always put something that I didn't mind if it stopped growing. So they're going to survive in the window for sure, but they're not most likely going to thrive unless you're working with western and southern facing windows. But again, there are so many factors when it comes to this. For example, what is in front of the window? If it's nothing, maybe it's a tree, maybe it's a house, I don't know what your situation is, but you can probably judge that by now if you have bright light or not. Also, in winter, the days are obviously shorter. Here, I think it's like from 7:30 or 8 a.m. until 4. It is dark at 4 p.m. and throughout the day, there is just also not enough light. So if you have a big collection, windows are probably not going to be enough. Again, I think you can probably put a lot of Hoyas there near the window, and a lot of them will survive, but they're not going to thrive. Now, when it comes to growing Hoyas in the window, there are also several other factors. So this is kind of the part where we are going into the second main theme, which is the temperature. If you are growing your Hoyas in the window, you should probably check depending what type of windowsill you have. For example, in my case, the windowsill used to have this stone slab, and which is just a genius idea by my dad, who kind of renovated this room. And that window slab gets very, very cold. in the winter. It stays pretty chill in the summer too. And this is not uncommon. You can see stone slabs in many, I think in many buildings, in many public buildings. It really depends where you live. So you may have stone, you may have wood, you may have plastic, PVC, you may just have regular concrete. But pay attention what your windowsill is made from, because if it's made from a material that is kind of cold to the touch, you should most likely have some barrier between the bottom of your pot and that material. So you can put a piece of wood, maybe a piece of styrofoam, and that should protect the root zone because they can get very cold. Again, it will depend where you live, what kind of windows you have, but for example, in my case, the windows get, or that area gets to about 17 degrees during some winter days, even with the heating on in the room. Currently, it's still not on, which I'm very grateful for. It's like mid-November or actually it's the end of November when I'm recording this, and the heating is still not on, and it's around 21 degrees in the room. This year, as you know, everywhere, I think the prices of the heating and electricity are going up, so doing all we can to reduce the usage. But to get back to the main story, if you're going to grow your Hoyas in the window, this is one of the first things you need to make sure of, that the material of the window sill is something that is not going to get too cold and it's not going to damage the root zone of your plants. The second thing that you should be aware of is that windows are cold. There is no way around it, and you have to move your plants a bit away from the pane of the glass. And this is true for any plant that you grow in the window, not just Hoyas. Do not let them touch the glass because very likely the leaves are going to get damaged, and that can potentially really negatively affect your plant. Also, if the windows are drafty, it can get actually much colder than 17 degrees. Another thing that I would think about if I'm putting Hoyas in the window is what kind of Hoya will I put in the window, because not all of them will do well. And I do have a kind of anecdotal story here. My friend has a beautiful Hoya undulata, and just a couple of days ago he messaged me because his Hoya undulata started to drop leaves all of a sudden. It was very quick, out of nowhere. And when he sent me the photo, I immediately said, well, that undulata is in the window. That's the issue. Hoya undulata is in general Hoya that is kind of sensitive, even though I don't find it particularly difficult to grow. The reason why my Hoya undulata does so well is because I didn't really put any challenges before her. She has had an easygoing life in the tent or in the cabinet, so not a lot of struggle there except for the initial trip story everyone knows. I know, I keep going on about it. But Hoya undulata is most likely not going to like your window. It is simply too cold. There are big fluctuations between the daytime and the nighttime temperatures. Listen, she's not about that life. She does not care for those things, so you can just take her away from the window. And if you really do not have any sort of LED light, I would just, I think it's going to be okay if it's less light, but not cold. We don't want them to be too cold because with less light, they will stop growing. But with cold, if we introduce that into the mix, it's, all sorts of things, not good things, are going to start to happen. So if you want to grow your Hoyas in the window, I think the best thing is to kind of make a list of what can be grown there. I think Hoyas like Hoya serpens, Hoya tinctungensis, Hoya retusa, Hoya linearis, Hoya passiflora, those will do really great in the window. Hoya bella, Hoya chinquagensis, Engleriana. Those are more cold tolerant. Hoya verticillata may do well. It ain't gonna bloom because even under my lights, they are just not in the mood. Hoya carnosa is going to do great in the window, not an issue for Hoya carnosa. Hoya pubicalix, pubicorolla, all of those can be grown in the window with no issue. Multiflora and Loki are not going to mind. Thompsoni or Hoya Lee. So just look for Hoyas that kind of naturally grow in higher altitudes. You don't want to put something that grows in, those kind of tropical conditions. Avoid something like Hoya mitrata, Hoya undulata. They're not going to love it. Hoya rinsi from Borneo is not going to love growing in the window. I think Hoya australis will be okay. Potentially Hoya kanyakumariana will also not mind too much, but I would certainly not risk it with Hoya that is hard to get or expensive. When it comes to temperatures, this is again where grow tents come in handy. What I find is that typically in my grow tents, the temperature will be 1 or 2 degrees higher than in my room. So if my room is around 20, the temperature in the grow tents will be 22, sometimes even a bit higher than that. And it's because of the plants, right? They are in this enclosed space. They kind of make a climate of their own. They're going to raise the humidity and the temperature a bit. And also the lights will heat up the space as well. Now, I do find that the regular LED lights are heating up far more than the grow lights, and which is crazy because grow lights are 300 watts. They are dimmed to about 75 watts, so 25%, but the regular LED lights, the hardware store LED lights, really do heat up. In the back, you don't see it now because it's turned off. Also, it's actually took it down. I had an 18 watt light, regular hardware store LED light, that kept falling off from the Rotsta, from the top of the Rotsta cabinet, which is metal. I used magnets, I glued magnets on it, and it kept falling off because the light would heat up so much that the glue would dry and crack. And I used even very strong glue that is supposed to be able to hold, I don't know, some crazy weight. Like I used the same glue for the pots to hang on my wall, and that didn't work. I tried double-sided tape, several brands, nothing worked because the light gets so hot. And not all of them will get so hot, but quite a lot of them will get very hot, and some of them will have a buzzing noise, just a slight hum. And when you have a lot of the regular LED lights, it's not pleasant. But you know, the benefit is that they will heat up. Again, can be a benefit, maybe not, depends how close the plants are, and also, you know, an issue in summer, but in winter it kind of comes in handy. Also, if you grow the plants in the cabinet, the temperature will be slightly higher than in your room. I would say for a lot of Hoyas, the ideal winter temperature, if you want to kind of maintain them, is around 20 degrees of Celsius. A lot of them would prefer it to be 23, 24. I really think Undulata would prefer it to be slightly hotter. Also, my Hoya Meredithii, I think when I got it in 2019 or 2020, I can't remember, but I think it was 2019, the first winter, she did not love it because my temperature was 19, and it started to develop all sorts of unattractive spots and to lose the leaves. And I asked the seller, I didn't know this back then, but she said that the temperature at which she keeps it in the winter, all her Hoyas, is 23. That's a bit difficult now. We all know why. Complex issue. So we do the best we can. So I think 20 degrees is somewhat acceptable. I think you can definitely go lower for many of the Hoyas. You can go to 15 or even to 10. But, you know, you gotta be kind of careful here. There is a chart on Doug's Chamberlain site, Vermont Hoyas, which I will link down below. This is a good starting point. Not all of the Hoyas are listed here. That would be an infinite chart. Also infinite task, infinite amount of work for someone trying to kind of sample it. Well, maybe not infinite, but like pretty difficult. You can kind of get a sense of which Hoya would like what temperatures. Now, I think, you know, if you kind of study this chart and if you look up the species in that chart, where it's from, where it grows, and if you don't find your Hoya in the chart, you know, you can look up something that grows in, you know, similar environment to one Hoya that is in the chart. So it's a bit of research and a bit of back and forth, but it's definitely doable. And who doesn't love rabbit holes and researchers, right? Is it only me? But anyways, you can kind of figure out what temperature would be ideal for your Hoya. But I do find that these are pretty accurate. And if you're growing in the window, put the ones that are most resistant in the window and then move some of the ones a bit back. You can put them in a grow tent, or you can even put them in a propagation box. I remember a story from a couple of years ago from one of the growers in Croatia. She used to use big propagation boxes, and like you get the biggest one that you can get, right? And you can overwinter your cuttings. You cannot overwinter like a big plant, obviously, but if you have like a bunch of small cuttings, if you are just starting out, or for whatever reason you have a bunch of small cuttings, you can overwinter them in the box. And the benefit is you can also use a heat mat, which is inexpensive. I don't think they use too much of electricity, and they keep the bottom quite warm. But I think also just lifting it up on some piece of styrofoam or piece of wood is also going to help. So not really setting it on the floor. That's one of the tips that may or may not be useful. However, I would shop around a bit. I do know that here, because I have infinite amount of propagation boxes and I was constantly looking for the biggest possible one for my philodendron cuttings, because obviously if I were to cut up this plant, I'm never cutting you again, don't worry about it. We are past that phase. Air raid cuttings can get quite large, so I was always looking for the biggest box, and I think one time at IKEA I saw like a pretty big one, but it was 40 euros. And to me, that is crazy because a grow tent that is maybe 60 by 60 or 70 by 70, which is 180 centimeters tall, so basically a human can fit inside, that is around 60 or 70 euros in itself. So really kind of check all the prices before you decide on the purchase. Again, I know that tents are an eyesore for many, but let's just face it, propagation boxes aren't really, exceptional craftsmanship. Another way to go is obviously buying a cabinet, a used one, a new one, whatever. They can be good. Not as useful as the tents and not as cheap as the tents, but they can be useful. Obviously, when it comes to light and temperature, you don't really need to provide them the most ideal conditions. They are maybe not going to grow during the winter, and that's completely fine. I have Hoyas that don't grow for me during the summer when it's too hot. They don't like it. I have some Hoyas that don't grow much during the winter. And, for me, it's really not a competition who grows his plant the fastest, who blooms his plant the fastest. It's all about, growing them, enjoying in the flowers whenever they may come. So I wouldn't really feel bad if you cannot provide certain plants, certain conditions, if you cannot meet their temperature, ideal temperature for growth. Just make sure that you meet some minimum so they are going to survive. But even that is really not a big issue. At the end of the day, they're plants, so let's not get upset if some of them don't maybe make it throughout the winter. The reason I'm saying is, I don't want anyone to feel bad that they cannot meet the ideal condition for the plant. Also, it's perfectly fine to downsize, really, it doesn't matter. Whatever you find the easiest, and don't ever feel guilt about doing any of that, right? I threw away a couple of Hoyas the other day. Those are really the two most important factors when it comes to overwintering Hoyas. Of course, they also kind of work with some other things. With less light and lower temperatures, there comes watering or not watering your Hoyas, which is fantastic. A little break. Winter is really the time when you will reduce your watering, again, dependent on the first two factors. If you grow Hoyas under artificial lights, in the grow tents, in the cabinets, you are most likely not going to reduce the watering if the temperature is good and if the light is good. When it comes to watering, I would say it's mostly related to temperature, and then light comes in second here. At least that is my opinion, because it can be bright, but the ambient temperature may be low. So in that case, you will still have to reduce the watering, even though they may continue to grow. Just make sure to reduce the watering. If it's warm enough, if there is enough light, you will most likely continue to water as usual. I try to stretch it a bit because who has the time, really? But if the temperature is really low, you may even go longer than a couple of weeks. What you can also do is water them maybe more frequently, but with less water. That is also a tip that I got from a grower many years ago, and it seems to work. I don't think I really water them a lot, even when I water, because I use the pump sprayer and I kind of just go around the pot quickly, and that's that. That's what they get. But if you have your Hoyas in the window, it may be cooler there, so maybe you're watering something that is away from the window every 10 days, and maybe those in the window get water every 15 days, or in my case it would be every 20 days, because I ain't gonna water you in between. So I would probably water the ones that are not in the window every 10 days or so, and the ones in the window, every other time that I water the rest of them. They gotta work with our schedule. We don't work with their schedule. Just forget about what people say, work with their schedule. Really, you have 500 plants and you check each one? Oh, come on. I see a lot of people out there who have very big collection, and they're like, check if your pot is dry by lifting it, seeing how much it will. Really? Do you know how much time would I need to water these plants if I did that for every single? I would never be done. I would just give up, and that would be the end. So in my case, I just water them. There is like a watering day, and they all get water. and they kind of gotta have to get used to it. I might skip a pot, but if I skip you, just know you are not getting water until the next time. I ain't gonna come back in a couple of days to check back on you. You have to be really special for me to do that. Another thing when it comes to watering, I would be cautious if I'm growing in semi-hydro or with pods that have reservoirs. Maybe you put less water in the reservoir, maybe you don't even use the reservoir in the winter, depending on the ambient temperature. I think if you are over 20, it's pretty safe, even 18. I think once we get into that zone when it's 15 or less, that's kind of a dangerous territory. And I know there are people who have 15 and less. I know there are like people who grow in the windows, or you don't heat up all the rooms in the house, and that's perfectly fine. But in that case, I think I would most likely abandon the reservoir. Also, different mixes will behave differently. I know that bark and moss will need watering very frequently in the summer, far less in the winter, so that mix, for example, would be great. But in my experience, something like semi-hydro is not the most ideal. I did not like semi-hydro in winter. I did find quite a bit of root rot on my Hoyas, so that's one of the reasons why I abandoned it. And yeah, just not my preference, and clearly not their preference as well. Also, when it comes to water, make sure that the temperature is right. I don't know if you use tap water or if you store your water somewhere, if you have rainwater. I store rainwater in a cold space, and I usually either bring it into my room to kind of let it get to the room temperature, or I will heat it up a bit on the stove, and I will kind of check with my hand just so it's not freezing, because that can really damage the roots. You can also just bring it into the whatever room your plants are in, wait it to get to the room temperature, and then it's fine to water with it. But just be careful with that, because using cold water can be really stressful for our gorgeous divas. One more thing that kind of goes hand in hand with watering temperature and light is fertilizing. If you have cabinets and grow tents, and if you have lights in, like I have in my room, or if you have abundance of light somehow in the winter, I'm not questioning you, you may need to continue fertilizing regularly. And really, if your Hoya is growing actively in the winter, you can just continue with the regular fertilizing regime. If there is no light, or if there is less light, no light is no good. So we're not even gonna entertain that. But if there is far less light and if it's colder, I would stop fertilizing the Hoyas. I would maybe give them half dose once a month or something like that. Currently, because my plants are growing actively, I use fertilizing with each watering. I use the powdered fertilizer rain mix, which again, similar to MSU fertilizer, and they are doing really well with that. But again, if the situation was different, I would withdraw fertilizing completely. Just assess what your situation is. If it's actively growing, then it will most likely need a bit of fertilizer. Humidity can also be a challenge for a lot of people in the winter. Personally for me, well, it is a challenge, but in a different way, because it gets way too humid in here. Without the dehumidifier, easily 85% of humidity, so we have to bring that down. Which is not entirely bad, because the dehumidifier will raise the temperature and I will have all the water that I can use for watering as byproduct. Depending on your heating system, your air may become too dry. And that is not going to bother Hoyas like Hoya carnosa, Pubicalyx, Pubicorolla, Australis, all the kind of more common ones. They're gonna be fine and you don't have to do anything about it. But if you're growing something more sensitive, undulata, maybe mitrata, even though she really has not been in my case, but I did hear that she will need more humidity to flower and to grow. Callistophila for me can be a bit finicky without humidity, Hoya meredithy as well. I have found that some of them really need the extra humidity to keep growing. I think the best way is to kind of ask around if you're struggling with a particular Hoya and you know that your humidity is low. Just see what other humidity other people are growing it in. But I don't find it to be, at least for me, it's not a big concern if humidity drops to 40. Obviously, if it drops to like 20, please get a humidifier, because that's really not great for you as well. But I think 40 to 60 is perfectly fine. I think they are going to be okay, so you don't have to worry too much about it. I don't find that you need humidifier for the grow tents as well. It's around 85 to 95 in my grow tents without any additional humidifier. And that might be because of the room as well. The room is just humid by itself. So that will probably depend on the environment of the space in which your grow tents are in. Also for the cabinets. So if it's in a very dry room, you may need to weather strip it. Or if it's in a room that is slightly more humid, you may not need to do that. So those are really some of the most important things when it comes to overwintering your Hoyas. Space is always an issue, but I think trellising your Hoyas, putting them up against the wall, hanging them, cramming them all in the tent if you have one. We can find a space, shift the pot couple of millimeters, turn it around a bit, and suddenly another pot fits in magically. But there is really no magical advice for overwintering the Hoyas. You just have to pay attention to the light, to the temperature, and based on that, you reduce or up the watering and kind of look at your Hoyas, which one is more sensitive, which one is not. I think they will tell you pretty quickly too, like with my friend, Undulata was like, okay, listen, we're not gonna do this. I'm not doing this. And she was almost on her way out, but he noticed it in time. But of course, there are some benefits of the winter. Some Hoyas like Hoya retusa, Hoya linearis, Hoya bella, Hoya chinquagensis, and gleriana, they bloom very prolifically in winter. You may even get Hoya thompsoni and Hoya lee to bloom. So you can kind of use the winter as well. The shorter day length, the lesser temperatures are triggers for quite a few of the Hoyas. So it's not bad to see some of them in bloom in this time of the year. Another thing, which I don't know whether it's common or not, but kind of, winter and winter going into spring, I find that there are more pests. So you may notice a couple of mealybugs especially. I remember in the previous winters when I had my Hoyas in the window, I started to call them the cursed window because I would always get mealybugs. If I put something in the window, there is no way it's not going to have mealybugs. Hoyas, orchids. Now I have violets in the window and I don't have mealybugs. I have thrips. Thank you. We enjoy it. So make sure also to kind of check them regularly. A good tip for winter is because we kind of put our plants very close to one another, which is not bad. First of all, you can fit more, you can make use of the light. They are going to create their ambient, when they're kind of packed together. And it may also help with the temperature a bit, is that if someone has, unwanted traveler, they're going to spread very, very easily in that situation. So make sure to also kind of check them. I think winter is also like a good time to kind of take a look at your Hoyas, retrellis them, cut off some dead vines, make sure there are no insects. You can even propagate if you have good conditions. You can propagate them all year round. I do it all year round. I just actually have to propagate some Hoyas right now. Not right now because I'm not going to do it today. It's kind of like, the next day thing, and then the next day comes and it's the next day thing. It's just like with the violet in the window. It has thrips, and I know how to get rid of thrips very efficiently. But it's just like, it's not even like we're going to cross that bridge when we come to it, because the bridge is there. The bridge being the solution to the thrip situation, or are thrips the bridge? I'm not really sure who is who in this metaphor, but we're not crossing that bridge. That is the point. We're not crossing the bridge today. We're not crossing it tomorrow. We keep saying to ourselves we're going to cross the bridge tomorrow, but we're not. We all know we're not. It's just like, next day you look at that thing and it's like, it's just too much cardio to cross that bridge, isn't it? I think this is a moment where I realize I should probably be ending the video, where we start with the nonsense metaphors that are also not related to the video in any way. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that these tips were useful. Maybe they're not really tips, but some things to consider. If you do have some tips, leave them down in the comments below. I think it will be useful for everyone to kind of start a conversation around this. I think there are also always new people coming in, new growers. We welcome you. We need more of you. We need the Hoya community to beat the arid community. That is my secret plan. That is the evil plan. To rule the world with Hoyas. Yes, that is the secret plan. It's not secret anymore. If you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel because you definitely want to be a part of all of this. Right? Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you soon. Bye! I would like to take some time to thank my patrons. A massive shout out to my $5 patrons. My 3 anonymous patrons, Alex von Siebenthal, Anne-Margaret Moen, Angela Bernard, Ann C., Ashley Hoyas, Beth Gibson, Betsy Begonia, Carrie Cynthia Taylor, Danube Daniels, Daria Kaminska, Deanne Sikorsky, Farah, Gina Geise, Go Green Tropical, Houseplant Heather, Hoya Heather, Yana Griffin, Jessica Chio, Kayla Vavra, Kelly Cool, Kelso, Kristen Sherwood, Leplan de Steph, Mandy Milliken, Mars B, Martina, Alif Per Day, Marty Miller, Melissa Walker, Nicole Ferranti, Mirka Grun Roos, Naily Yang, Nicole Moreau, Nicole and Kelly of Schleif Tropicals, PJ, Rachel Colette Conroy, Robin L. Jennings, Stephanie H2O, Stephanie Zeely May, Tanya, Tessa Martins, TJWO, Wendy Foreman, and Zlokov Nipani. Also, a big thank you to my $3 patrons: Angelina Farnan, Anne Margaret, Brana Phillips, Kilone, Claudia L, Fluffy Blue Sheep, Jerry's Garden, Lisa Helling, Liz Martinez, Morgan Kennedy, Nella, Nerdy Kathy, Plan Druid, Plantolania, Ringlov, and Tang Watanas Riakul. And a thank you to my $1 patrons: Brandon Pacheco, Carrie Jacinta, Lauren M, Lori N Subramaniam, Luzman Fernandez, Neely Spicer, Olivia Chin Mueller, and Paula Plants. Thank you so much for incredible support. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that everyone's Hoyas survived the winter, and if some of them don't, well, we're not gonna talk about that. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you soon.